I'll introduce myself and start from there. Yeah. Okay. My name is Kevin Briggs. I'm an author. I'm the author of Spiritual Consciousness, A Personal Journey. And the book is about my lifelong contact with my extended star families. And if I start at the beginning with my story, and I'll use my PowerPoint here to illustrate it. It started when I was 3 years old. My mother had engaged a photographer to take some photographs for the family album. And this is the actual photograph that was taken. I had my hair brushed, I was washed, and my mother knitted that new green cardigan for me. So the photographer arrived. I was lifted up onto the dining room oak table, and from that elevation, I could see around the room. And I realized my consciousness was in a physical body again. It was an amazing feeling. It was like two of me looking out from the physical. So that was my first encounter of this incarnation, shall we say. So, and then my next encounter, I would be 8 years old. I was taking a bath at home. And as a child, I was always sensitive to the frequencies that surround us. And I felt a change in the frequency in the bathroom. I looked to my right and two beings appeared. Frightened me to death at the time, as you can imagine, Chloe. And they were both very attractive, one male, one female. My wife drew these for me, these sketches to represent them. They both had deep blue eyes. They both had long blonde shoulder length hair, and they were both extremely attractive. They were speaking telepathically to one another, which I could understand. Their names are Ort and Dee. Ort is the male, Dee is the female. And Dee said to Ort, "Is this the boy?" And Ort said, "Yes, this is the boy." And then she said, "Are you sure this is the boy?" He said, "Yes, I'm sure this is the boy." And then she said, "But look at him. He's small, he's uneducated, and he's frightened by our presence." And she was correct. I was terrified. And Ort replied, "Yes, this is the boy. I will guide him. I will teach him." There was some other conversation, and then they left. I was so frightened I didn't get out of the bath. The water went cold. I was shivering. My mother came in to see why I was in the bath. I told her about the two beings, and she said it was just my imagination. It wasn't. I'm now 70 years old. I still have contact with these two beings, and Ort was true to his word. He's educated me throughout my life, and the main thread of the education has been one of consciousness and how it can be utilized as a conduit for communication, for travel, for healing, for education, for creation and co-creation. So that's the end result of all these years of the experiences that they've given me. So I'll move on to the next slide and see what it is.
When when they appeared, could you kind of like see through them a little bit? Or was it like they were like opaque and you couldn't see through them?
No, they were solid in appearance. It looked like they were there in the physical.
Okay.
So whether they were or whether it was a projection, I don't know. But they certainly looked to be in the physical. I have seen them later on in life as opaque when they've appeared in my home. I've also seen them as here in this picture here as a pure conscious energy orb, both Ort and D together as a pure conscious energy orb. But this slide here, it relates to my next encounter. So I've had the one at 3, the one at 8. I'm now 9 years old, and I've had some friends round. It's a Sunday, and we've been playing board games. It was time to pack up the board games and go. They were going home for their tea, their dinner, and we packed up the games. And I showed them out the back door. I turned around to enter my home, and I could feel an energy again in the home. So I went into the living room, I went into the kitchen, I went upstairs into the bedrooms, back down into the living room where I felt the energy was strongest, and I was drawn to the curtains. So I looked behind the curtains in the window, and there was this orb, just like this one here. It was 4 to 6 inches across. It was slightly vibrating. There was no communication at the time, and I thought I'd brought it into the home. I hope my mother didn't see it because I might get into trouble. Anyway, I went to bed that night, hoping when I woke up in the morning, it was there. I woke up in the morning and I knew instantly it was still there. I could feel the frequency. So I went downstairs, I went to the window, I looked behind the curtain, and it was still there. To cut a long story short, it stayed all week. And each time I came home from school, I was hoping it had gone. It hadn't. I went to the window and it was still there. But on Friday, when I came home from school, about 4 p.m., I opened the back door and I couldn't feel the frequency. I went to the window and the orb had gone. At that time, I didn't know who or what that was. I do now. That was Ort, the male that had materialized in my bathroom. That was his pure conscious energy orb, separate from his physical. Now, as a result of that, I was able then, from then on, there was no communication, but after that, I was able to travel outside of my body, outside of the physical realm, at will. But I didn't use it to go. I know now the full potential of it. I didn't then. I just used it to go about 70 miles away, usually on a Sunday, and visit my grandparents. These are my grandparents on the left-hand side. And I would relax, I'd open my mind, I'd leave my body, I would travel over there the 70 miles. I would enter through the roof, and there was a chair there in the upstairs master bedroom. They had a dressing room there. I sat in that chair as this orb, and I could look down through the floor, which was opaque. I could usually see my grandfather was either watching the TV or reading the newspaper on a Sunday, and my grandmother would be in the kitchen cooking. And it gave me great pleasure to go and see them this way. And I often wondered at the time, if they came upstairs, what would they see? I know the answer to that now, and it would be they would have seen my pure conscious energy orb, just like this, 4 to 6 inches across, slightly vibrating. So they never came upstairs and saw that, but that's what they would have seen. So so now I'm 9 now, I'm able to travel outside my physical body. So my next encounter would be, I was 14. And at 14, I had a paper route. And every time I left the home, a UFO would appear above the house. And then as I'm walking towards or cycling towards the paper store, a second UFO would always appear. And they would follow me around the paper round until I'd finished. Then one would usually go straight up into space, and the other one would go back the way to come from. And on many occasions, I could feel that there was a frequency behind the wall, behind the hedge. And on one day, I plucked up courage and I said, I know that you're there. Can you show yourself? And 2 small greys appeared from behind the hedge, behind the wall. I wasn't frightened. And I said to them, what do you want? And they said, there's a group of people that would like to meet with you. And I said, well, I've got my paper round to finish, and then I've got to go to school. I'd nearly finished the paper round anyway. They said, well, you can finish your paper round, and then if you come with us, we'll have you back in time for school. So I agreed to go with them. I finished the paper round, and I was transported with them in a small craft to a large mothership. And I only know that it was a large mothership because of the size of the hangar. It was the size of a football stadium, or 2 stadiums, really, I think. It was that big, it was huge. And there were all these different craft in there. And then they were leading me to the main entrance into the main body of the craft. And as I was doing that, there was a small grey working on a saucer type craft, and he waved at me. So I waved back just to be polite. Anyway, I wasn't frightened. We continued walking. We walked into the main area of the craft, the centre area, as it were, and there was an amphitheatre there. And the amphitheatre was full of all different beings. And at the front of the amphitheatre were 8 beings. They were the beings I was there to be introduced to. Let me see if I think I have a photograph of them somewhere. Oh,
When
this is where.
When you were seeing the 2 UFOs, did they look different?
They were just bright lights in the sky.
Okay.
Yeah, quite bright, but clearly they moved very quickly, and they were clearly craft. And one would just appear, then the one would come from the right hand side. Then they'd follow me around, and then when I watched them when they finished, one would just shoot straight up, and the other would go back the way it came. So it's quite obvious that they were craft. And this was the area where it happened. I lived in Wakefield at the time, and when I was dropped off, I finished the visit. they dropped me off in a small area that was like a little park area. So that's the area in the UK, a place called Wakefield, where I had this experience when I was 14. Oh, that's a different slide for something else. That's all up. Right, now these are the beings that were at the front of the craft. These were made drawn by or sketched by me for me by a friend, Kathleen Marden, and she made a depiction of them to give people something to look at, because I think if you get a visual, it helps. Not exactly as it were, but just a representation. So the first two, let's have a look. We've got Art here in the left hand, in the blue shirt and the long hair. Then D, which I'd met when I was 8. And then I was introduced to Zark, and then he's a small grey, he's a mathematician and engineer. He designs propulsion systems. I still have a good relationship with him to this day. He has a sense of humour, and he moves my wife's personal items around our home, much to her dismay. I did ask him why he did that once, and he said, Kevin, I like teasing her. I think it's funny, but there's a serious side to it to let her know that we are here, we are amongst you. And then there was Anna. She was a blue bird type being, very empathic. And then Chica, I was a bit perturbed when I saw Chica, because he's like a big grasshopper, mantis being, very tall, over 6 feet. And actually, the Anna, the blue bird being, she picked up on the fact that I was a bit perturbed by this big grasshopper, and she came up and comforted me. And then the last one, oh no, there was Tag. He told me he was responsible for, he's a tall grey. He told me he was responsible for the security of the Council of 8 and the security of this quadrant of the galaxy. I hadn't thought about them being split up into quadrants before, but and then in the center was Ra. He's depicted here by a blue energy orb. Some people see him as a blue energy orb. I see him more as a ancient Sumerian. I've got a photograph a bit later on, I'll show you that. So that was the 8 that I met. And at the time, I thought I was just there as a human specimen to be paraded in front of this group of people. And I didn't realize, I know now that's not the case. What it was part of the Galactic Federation, and I'm sure there are many. And this Council of 8 were part of that. And all the people that were sat in the amphitheatre were the delegates, not unlike what we have here with our Congress, our Senate, or Parliament, or whatever, or United Nations, a similar setup. So I found that out later on. So anyway, they dropped me back off at home. I was away for about 20, 25 minutes later than I would normally be. I had my breakfast and I got to school on time. So that was the 8. I'm still in contact with all 8 to this day. And they're now reaching out to others as well, which is nice to see. And I've got confirmation from other people that they've had contact with. So really quite interesting. So I'll see what slides comes up next.
Did you ever see the being that waved at you again?
Well, I've got a story about him. I can tell you later on. I've got some photographs. It includes my wife. If you've got, I don't know how long we have, Chloe, but yeah,
as long as
I did.
you need.
Okay, I could talk for a week. Yes, I've got a nice story with him. His name is Tia, Teah, and he's a pilot. He's a technician and engineer type. He repairs his own craft and maintains it and flies people about, like for transport. But it remind me at the end, and I'll tell you a quick story, because I've got some slides as well, so which go with that. But I don't normally use that in this presentation. Now that this is Ra, he's Anunnaki. When I met him, his energy was just tremendous, and he's the lead counsel of this Council of 8. The bottom photograph is how I see him, as an ancient Sumerian, and sometimes I've seen him with wings, and other people have seen him. I was doing a talk once down in Orlando, and a few years ago now, and I was talking about my book, The Spiritual Consciousness, The Personal Journey, and a friend of mine in the audience, and I hadn't spoken about Ra before then, Billy, and what he looked like. And this lady, Betty, came up to me and says, Kevin, while you were giving your presentation, there was a being I could see. She's got psychic abilities. That I could see standing behind you. I said, what did he look like? She said, he looked like an ancient Egyptian Sumerian time, and he had wings. And I'm thinking, wow, she obviously seen him. So he was there while I was giving the presentation. So I think many people can see these beings. If you have the frequencies of consciousness, then you can connect with them. I think I'm fortunate the fact that I think when Art was in my home for those 7 days, or Sunday to Friday, that they raised my frequencies, allows me to connect with them. So so that's the 8 with Ra, who's the leader, and he's very old, he's ancient, and he was alive, he tells me, in the ancient Egyptian times, but now he's a 9th dimensional being, and he doesn't have a physical, but he can incarnate and as he wants, in and out, so because he's a higher conscious being. So oh, this is really this is another being I met just a few years ago. Her name is Shiva. And I woke up one morning and I was contacted by this entity, as it were, shall we say, or being. She's a 9th dimensional being. Anyway, she introduced herself to me and said she was Shiva. She's a great healer. I asked her if she was Shiva, I think the Buddhists worship, but Shiva. I think it's a Buddhist. I'm not certain. Anyway, she said, no, I spell my name Sheeva. And she's a great healer. She likes to heal people. But she told me she oversees the Council of 8, and she sits on the right-hand side of Ra, that oversees the Council of 8. And she's also a 9th dimensional being. So I met her a few years ago, but I introduced her to a friend of mine, Dr. Melanie Barton, and she now has regular contact with Shiva and has a psychic healing chamber where people can go to this psychic healing chamber while they're meditating and heal. She'll heal people. She loves healing people. So again, it's a higher level of consciousness, a higher being at those levels of consciousness that we can connect with. And with Shiva, through Dr. Melanie Barton, she'll help heal people. And I've heard a few testimonies from people that have done the meditation with Melanie, entered this psychic healing chamber and being healed of things. So these are areas of science that we don't know, we're not aware of, but probably still considered a bit woo-woo, a bit tin-hatty maybe, but all real to me. It's it's part of who I am. So see which slide I got. Oh, just another picture of Orton D, just another depiction that Kathleen did for me. Just it's easier to, if you've got a vision of somebody, what they look like. So I'll just keep going through these and see. Oh, we've got Zark. He's a scientist, as I said, mathematician, engineer. He is 5th dimensional, and as I say, he's a mathematician, engineer. He comes from the Pleiades system, and he has 3 offsprings, he tells me, and he calls them offspring, not children. So that's a bit about him. This is this. Ola, she's a tall white. She's an astrobiologist. I don't know much about her, other than she's got her hair is translucent, long blonde, but it's translucent. A long face, and her complexion is very pale. And this is Anna. She's the bluebird type being. I don't know where she's from, but she's empathic and another healer. Now this is one that I was a bit perturbed by. Chica, very well respected by the group. Very well respected. Very old, very ancient. So was him. And then we've got Tag. He's a tall guy I mentioned. He's 5th dimensional as well. And he's responsible for the security. So really it's just nipping through them. All right, now then, this is an interesting story, Chloe, because 5 or 6 years ago now, I obviously connect with this Council of 8 and have done all my life. And one day, Art came to me and said, Kevin, we want you to go down to a MUFON conference in Orlando. And I live 40 minutes from Orlando. And I wasn't really interested in going, but he asked me to go. So I went down. And as I'm going down there, I'm talking to him. I said, I don't know where I'm going. I'm not really interested in the nuts and bolts of the UFOs. And I'm sure that's what they'll be talking about. Anyway, and I said, I hope I meet somebody that can help me on my journey. I got down there. I was very impressed with the conference, very well organized, a lot of really good speakers. And I was surprised by the people that were attending, a lot of scientists, a lot of doctors, engineers, I was very pleasantly surprised. I listened to some of the lectures in the morning, and then it came to lunchtime, and I thought I'll go get a sandwich in the cafeteria. I went to the cafeteria and it was full. I bought my sandwich and I couldn't see a seat anywhere. Then I looked to the far side of the cafeteria and there's a seat on a table with two ladies. So I walked up. I said, "Do you mind if I sit down and eat my sandwich?" And said, "No." They were chatting away. So I ate my sandwich. They'd finished chatting, and then they brought me into the conversation. Well, the person I sat next to is the first lady there, Dr. Melanie Barton, and she was a person I was there to meet. I didn't know that at the time, but she was. So we struck up a conversation, and then we met again later on. At the conference, I also met the lady in the middle, Denise Stoner. She runs the oh no, she's part of the experiencer research team at MUFON. So I went to one of her meetings before the lectures started, and that was very interesting. I've never met other experiencers before, so it was quite interesting to hear other people's story of their contact. Just fascinating, really. And then the last one is Kathleen Marden. Kathleen Marden I was introduced to her. I'd heard of her. In fact, Kathleen did a lecture that day, and it was an excellent lecture. And so then I was introduced to Kathleen. We all went out for lunch. And then a couple of times, then I was invited back to Kathleen's house and to continue the conversation. And coincidentally, if you believe in coincidences, she lives in the same town as me, about 10 minutes away. So no coincidence there. These were the people I was supposed to be meeting. And they're all good friends now. So that's good. And but what happened? I went to Kathleen Marden's, and I was giving them. They asked me some questions, and I was giving them some information. And I think it was Denise that said, "Do you know what you're doing, Kevin?" I said, "No, what am I doing? I'm just telling you what they've told me." She said, "No, Kevin, you're channeling." I said, "Oh, I wasn't aware." Anyway, it would appear that I was channeling the information, and I wasn't aware. Denise recognised it because she's done some channeling before, and Melanie recognised it. I don't think Kathy did at that moment in time. But from that brief channeling, we then decided to meet at my home once a month over a 2-year period. And I actually started channeling the Council of Eight. And each month we would meet and record the channeling. And what was quite interesting, when I did the channeling, Denise brought some equipment to measure the temperature. And it varied between when I was channeling, the air temperature immediately around me went up anything between 7 and 10 degrees. I know Ra came through once, or a couple of times, and the 10-degree increase while I was channeling. But that's the energy, the conscious energy that they're at. Using my physical body to communicate with we nicknamed ourselves the Council of Four, the Earthly Council of Four. So we met for 2 years, once a month, became really good friends, and we're still friends to this day. And Kathleen Marden's published a book last year, I think it was, Forbidden Knowledge. That's here, look, it's on the screen. I don't need to hold it up, but I have a copy here. And in there are some of the transcripts from the Council of Eight. I think 120 questions that we asked. They're not all there, but some of them are there. So if you're interested in reading what questions, and there were normal questions like you or I would ask, but then obviously we've got them in Kathleen Marden's book now, so that's very interesting if you want to have a look at that. So let's see which slide I've got next. Now let's have a look. Oh, I mentioned the thermometer. She was taking temperatures. She used a digital thermometer like that to take the air temperatures immediately around me. So, that was just another picture. But that was nothing to do with this really. But I was out at the front garden one day and beautiful sky. So I thought, I'll take a picture of that. It was so blue and vibrant. I took a photograph, and then this cloud appeared, and I thought, wow, that's strange. But then when I zoomed in on it, it got windows and it's got 90-degree angles at the bottom, and it wasn't a blimp. It just appeared. So, and I didn't notice it until a couple of weeks later. I was looking at my photos and I saw that. And I think I zoomed in on it. So look, if I can zoom in. Oh, you can look. So look. Whoa, there. Look. Oh, you can see those two windows, and then there's 90-degree angles underneath it. And then if you look round it, there's 1, to 3 smaller craft that you can see around it. They're very,
Mm.
you couldn't see them on. Oh, you can make one out there, but that, yeah, that's going off track, is that? But that's what they do. They show up from time to time and show themselves, and